السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. لعل خطاب ترامب الأخير يعبر أقل عن حالة الاتحاد وأكثر عن حالة إعادة انتخاب ترامب واستراتيجيته للفوز بفترة ولاية ثانية في تشرين الثاني نوفمبر المقبل. ولكن إلى أي مدى نجح ترامب في السياسة الداخلية والملفات الحياتية الضاغطة والحيوية في حين أنه أخفق في الاقتصاد والسياسة الخارجية؟ شعار ترامب كان سجلوا كلماتي، فهل وفى ترامب بوعوده؟ وأين هي تعهداته ولا سيما مع قرب نهاية ولايته؟ مع رانيا خالق الكاتبة والناشطة السياسية نلقي الضوء على هذا الموضوع من الداخل. معكم زينب صفار، تابعونا. باختصار، لعل خطاب حالة الاتحاد الذي ألقاه دونالد ترامب في 4 شباط فبراير من العام 2020 لم يكن عن حالة الاتحاد بقدر ما كان عن حالة إعادة انتخاب ترامب وعن خطته للفوز بولاية رئاسية ثانية في تشرين الثاني نوفمبر، وعن تصميمه على تحريك قاعدته السياسية وتجييشها، وعلى إبلاغ الديمقراطيين أن حربه السياسية ضدهم ستتصاعد وتتفاقم حدتها. وكما يبدو للمتابع أن ترامب استغل خطابه لتسليط الضوء على إعادة انتخابه، وزعم أنه حقق نجاحاً في نقاط عديدة، حيث تم تقليب طبق الخوف والكراهية وتتبيله بحفنة كبيرة من الأكاذيب والتحريفات، وقدم مع وصفة جديدة من العنصرية تهدف إلى مساعدة ترامب على التمسك بالولايات المتأرجحة التي أمنت أغلبية الهيئة الانتخابية في العام 2016. رانيا خالق الكاتبة والناشطة السياسية اللبنانية الأميركية ومراسلة الطبقة الفقيرة ومقدمة برنامج في قناة In the Now توصف وضع ترامب فيما يتعلق بوعوده وتعهداته مع اقتراب انتهاء ولايته.
Well, actually, if you look at all of the different things that Trump promised, he hasn't fulfilled any of them, now that I think about it. One thing that he ran on that actually made a really big difference between him and Hillary Clinton that really scared a lot of even Republicans about Trump was he kept talking about the Iraq war and what a terrible idea it was, He kept talking about Libya and what a terrible idea it was, and he kept saying we're going to end these endless wars. And he didn't end up doing that. He did the exact opposite. Mm-hmm. He hired all the people who came up with the Iraq war to be a part of his administration, and they've escalated across the Middle East. They escalated dramatically with Iran, killing Qasem Soleimani a few weeks ago. They escalated dramatically with Venezuela, which, they've been starving with crippling sanctions that have killed 40,000 people in the last 2 years. So it's been a disaster on that front. And Trump, in fact, has actually, I wouldn't say lost support, but depending on who he runs against in the Democratic primary, whoever wins the Democratic primary, depending on who runs against him, he could end up running against somebody like Bernie Sanders, who actually peels into his base, because Bernie Sanders is making that same promise. Trump also said he wasn't going to touch Social Security or Medicare. He was going to expand it. He hasn't expanded it. And in fact, he's dropped taxes on the rich and actually raised them on the middle class. So really the only thing Trump has that he offers that his base continues to support is his rhetoric, his language of not just fear like you mentioned, but also people in the US are so disgusted and sick of the ruling class and establishment politicians that they even start to like Trump just because he talks trash about the people that they hate. And it's almost like not
and
even
he's
about...
good, always good on TV. He knows how to handle the media.
Yeah,
he's a showman.
He's a showman.
He's
right?
the apprentice.
He entertains. He really does. I mean, even sometimes when I watch the State of the Union, it's a show. You're watching a circus. And it is a little bit entertaining. But at the end of the day, he really hasn't followed through on any of the things that got him elected. Even some of the more racist things, you know, like building a wall, right? He didn't build a wall. So what he has going for him is the ongoing fear-mongering and the ongoing show. So it all depends who runs against him. Because if it's a Democrat like Bernie Sanders who runs against him, then it'll become about policy and about this guy's a billionaire and about like, you know, I'm actually here to tell you that I'm going to end the wars and I'm going to expand Social Security and I'm going to make, you know, rich people pay taxes. Whereas if it's some other Democrat, like a Hillary Clinton style Democrat, he's probably going to win again because people hate those kinds of people and they prefer the show.
Now, we're going to go into details, perhaps a bit more about each of the subjects that he promised to fulfill, but he didn't, apparently. But it seems that, you know, there's a kind of escalatory speech against the Democrats. Are the Democrats ready for any escalatory steps by Trump through the days to come?
Well, the problem with the Democratic Party is that in rhetoric and in behavior, you know, like ripping up the speech at the end of the State of the Union, they behave as though they're against
theatrical,
Trump. Right, the theatrics. They do this whole impeachment process against Trump that they knew wasn't going to work, by the way. But at the end of the day, they still approve Trump's budget for endless war, right? They still approve his $738 billion military budget, which is like the highest it's ever been in America. And they still hand all this over to him. They still...
And you are not in the event of direct confrontational war.
Yeah, no, exactly. We're supposed to, you know, we're not necessarily like, you know, officially at war with anybody. They still approve of his legislation. They still pass it through because at the end of the day, Democrats and Republicans have differences about cultural issues, right? Like things like gay marriage and abortion. These are the social issues that separate Democrats and Republicans, and sure, they're important. But at the end of the day, they're on the same side when it comes to the economy, right? They're both funded by the same billionaires and the same people and the same interests, the military industry, the pharmaceutical industry. And at the AIPAC, right? The pro-Israel lobby. So at the end of the day, they're on the same side there. And Democrats, you know, if they really wanted to confront Trump, they'd be interested in picking somebody to run against him who could actually win. And rather than backing the one person, the front runner, who could actually beat Trump, which is Bernie Sanders, they are dedicating all of their party's resources to trying to beat Bernie Sanders and put in his place someone who is going to lose to Donald Trump. Right now, they're trying to push Pete Buttigieg, which we might have never heard of him because he was a nobody a year ago, some small town mayor from Indiana. They're trying to push him to, you know, to be the Democratic nominee, a guy who would definitely lose against Trump. So the Democratic Party, to preserve its own interests, is a bunch of rich people who who want endless war, are, you know, spending their time trying to defeat Bernie Sanders instead of Donald Trump. It's actually really shameful.
Why are they working hard and, you know, putting every effort to sabotage Bernie Sanders, the Democratic Party?
Because the Democratic Party, at the end of the day, is run by a bunch of rich people who want to protect their interests. They want to protect their class interests. Bernie Sanders is running a campaign with a huge movement behind him that's all about wealth inequality. It's all about the obscene level of inequality in America, which has one of the highest levels of inequality in the developed world, where this handful of really rich people has all the resources and money and is taking more and more while everybody suffers and everybody else, you know, can't afford health care. He's trying to give people universal health care. He's trying to scale back the wars. And most importantly, I mean, one thing Democrats are terrified of is Bernie Sanders, while he's certainly not perfect, he speaks about Palestinians like they're human beings, which is unheard of, you know, in American politics. It's a really, really, really big deal, as sad as that standard is. So all of these things, you know, universal health care, raising taxes on the wealthy, these are things that are against the interests of the elites who control the Democratic Party. And so that's why they're putting everything they can into defeating him. They're also scared of Bernie Sanders because, you know, the Democratic Party, just like the Republicans, is also run by people who are part of the national security. But like I said, there are a lot of Democratic elites who would rather have a second Trump presidency than see Bernie Sanders win the nomination to protect these interests that I mentioned earlier.
We will continue to talk about the dossiers, Rania, when it comes to what Trump has promised, what Trump has delivered or failed to deliver. On the economy, Trump promised annual economic growth of at least 3% on a sustained basis, but dangled the possibility of 5 and 4, 5, and maybe even 6%. Of course, that hasn't happened. An aging population, weak productivity growth are restraining the US and global economy over the long term. So the real picture is that unemployment is much higher today and wages are stagnating for the vast majority or worse. Hence, Trump's economic record failed domestically.
And not just unemployment, I mean underemployment, right? There's people who don't have enough work. And on top of that, even people in America who are employed. If you're a person with money in America, life is fantastic. But for the majority of people, I mean, they are living paycheck to paycheck. They don't have even $400 in their bank account to cover an emergency. That's not an easy, comfortable way to be living in a country that's as rich as the United States is. So there are a lot of people who are so economically insecure, financially insecure. There's no safety net.
He talks about boosting, the numbers of people who are lifted from the food stamps. And it seems that it's only like single mothers and their children.
And he's kicking them off. He's actually shrinking the food stamp program. And I believe like 700,000 people are supposed to be kicked off the food stamp program in the next year because of Donald Trump. That said, just because he has unpopular policies doesn't mean he won't win again. And that's a mistake that a lot of Democrats make. They just assume that anybody can win against him, and it's just not true. Because at the end of the day, like you mentioned, like Trump's a good showman. He's good at the theatrics, and not all Americans watch the news every single day or understand that Trump might be responsible for this. And it's also not Trump. It's, Trump, one thing that he has that benefits him is he can always blame the other side because the other side has pushed a lot of the same policies that Republicans have pushed.
Rania, allow me to ask you here, who is or what is the decisive element when it comes to such kind of elections? Is it the deep state? Is it, the money, the funding, AIPAC? What is, we can say that this is the decisive element or one of the most decisive elements in elections in the US of A?
All of those things, but more importantly, I think the big issue is money. Special interests that have money decide elections because it's whoever has the most funding. You cannot be the Republican it's almost impossible to be the Republican or Democratic nominee without a lot of money coming your way. And where do you get money in elections? You get money from dark money groups that are funded by, billionaires in the pharmaceutical industry and pro-Israel lobbyists and the military-industrial complex.
Yes, exactly.
All of these things. That's what decides who you get to choose between.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily decide who ends up winning, but the people who end up your choices are sort of like filtered through a process by these interests for you, which isn't a real democracy. I mean, at the end of the day, the U.S. is not a real democracy.
Right. That said, allow us to stop now for a short break, and then afterwards we're going to continue to talk about other dossiers of what Trump has promised and delivered or not. إذا فاصل قصير ونعود، لا تذهبوا بعيدا. فيما يتعلق بمواضيع الحدود والهجرة ومنع السفر، لم يكن قد مضى على انطلاق حملة ترامب الانتخابية عام 2016 سوى دقائق معدودات حين قام بوعد جريء جدا قائلا: سأبني جدارا كبيرا جدا على الحدود مع الجنوب وسأجعل المكسيك تدفع ثمن هذا الجدار. لكن هذا الأمر لم يتحقق، وما زال الرئيس يطلق حملة حادة بشأن هذا الجدار هذه السنة أيضا، وهو يعد ببناء جدار يمتد 450 ميلا مع نهاية العام 2020. ولقد قضى وقتا طويلا في خطابه وهو يهاجم مدن الملاذ. لكن ما هي مدن الملاذ؟ وكيف يغذي خطاب ترامب مجتمعا أمريكيا ينقسم اليوم عرقيا أكثر فأكثر؟
So sanctuary cities are basically where people who are undocumented won't be, like their information won't be shared with ICE. Which is Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Right.
If they're like arrested, and the city's local authorities under the enforcement of the mayor will not cooperate. Like the police, local police won't cooperate with ICE because in a lot of cities, what used to happen is like if you're arrested for something or you're pulled over, the police department will give your information over to ICE, and if you're undocumented, then they will send you to ICE custody. So Trump, of course, wants us to stop because he's all about deporting undocumented immigrants. But I always feel it's very, very important to mention what Trump has done is disgusting, it's horrendous, it's terrible. But a lot of this was happening under Obama, and it just didn't receive attention. People were deported in record numbers under the Obama administration. In fact, the Latino community called Obama the deporter-in-chief because he was deporting so many people. Of course, Trump has escalated this, and he's gone a step further by, snatching children from their parents at the border and separating them and then putting them in cages. But there were a lot of things that were happening under Obama, and that needs to be remembered, because it's not like it was perfect under Democrats. And in many ways, Democrats laid the groundwork for giving Trump the powers he was able to have.
Under Obama, perhaps racism is more masked, but today it's more apparent and clear with Trump administration.
Absolutely.
It's very on the table and in the open, this kind of segregation or racial dividing the society more along racist lines. This is something very apparent in today's US of A.
Absolutely. And Trump has done something very effective. I mean, that's one of the reasons he won. He won on hatred of Muslims. He won on hatred of Latinos, calling Mexicans rapists, calling Muslims terrorists. And then he promised the Muslim ban, which he actually followed through on, which actually ended up impacting Iranians more than anybody else, banning Iranians from coming into the country. But no, it's been absolutely horrible. And this is the typical behavior of a demagogue, right? They use racism and hatred and discrimination and
also for electoral purposes, trying to divide the minority votes, trying to manipulate.
In a country like America, where, like we mentioned earlier, people are living paycheck to paycheck, they feel really financially insecure. These kinds of ideas, this sort of hateful rhetoric, is really easy to use to try and gain support, because people feel scared financially, and so when
the immigrant issue,
they're happy to blame whoever. They're happy to blame anybody else. Right. And you've got this guy who's on the stage who's telling you here's who you should hate for this, rather than actually hate who you should hate, which is people like him, billionaires like him.
But it seems also that Trump is suffering of a kind of syndrome or a complex. It is the Obama complex, that any kind of agreement that was signed by his predecessor, Obama, he tried to rescind or to renegotiate, to withdraw from. In that he withdrew from many deals signed by his, as I said, predecessor Obama. He withdrew from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the Paris Agreement, which is an international climate accord, the JCPOA or the Iran deal, the NAFTA, the UNESCO, the UNRWA, claiming that some of these agreements are, quote, a rape of our country. Yet he signed the so-called deal of the century. It's rather, it should be called like
steal of the century.
It's the looting of the century, or the betrayal of the century.
Trump doesn't have any principles. Like you said, the reason he reneged on all these deals was solely because he hates Obama. He hates his predecessor, and it was his way to be like, in your face. But at the end of the day, I mean, the deal of the century is basically just whatever Netanyahu wants. It's whatever the Likud party wants. And it was also a re-election ploy, right? Trump is going and he's telling the pro-Israel lobby, look at everything, even in the speech he gave about the deal of the century. He was like, look at everything I gave to you. I killed Qasem Soleimani for you. He told them that. He said that. I got out of the Iran deal for you, which the Israel lobby had a huge hand in pushing for. So the whole deal it's a huge sham.
Particularly the evangelists,
exactly.
They have a great effect and hand, and particularly that he has given them something very clear, that he is pro what they say, is that he moved the embassy of the US of A into Jerusalem.
And it's really important you mentioned the evangelicals, because his Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and his Vice President, Mike Pence, are two extremist
staunch
Christians who want the end times. I mean, they see Israel as their way of bringing about the rapture. They actually believe that. And they think this is a step closer to doing this. So Trump absolutely was like talking to evangelicals when he gave that speech, because in fact, that's probably become the biggest base of Israel supporters in the US. It's not even American Jews. It's like American Christian evangelicals who want to bring up about the end days. It's like, it would be laughable if it wasn't actually so scary. But yeah, this is, I mean, at the end of the day, all of these deals that Trump backed out of was to please different interests and also to, say, to shove it in Obama's face. And the deal of the century was specifically not just for him, by the way, it was also for Netanyahu, because Netanyahu's got an election coming up. He's under investigation. He's got all these
for
people
corruption,
for corruption.
Fraud.
So it was actually like something to help both of them for re-election, which makes it even more disgusting in a way.
Right. My last question for you, Rania, did Trump have any actual foreign policy accomplishment during his entire term in office?
Depends how you look at it, because I think Trump has so isolated the U.S. from its allies, like its European allies, with his behavior, with his like unilateral bullying.
He was threatening the EU through.
Yeah, his behavior, and what he's done has just been so extreme. I mean, killing a beloved Iranian commander and a beloved Iraqi commander has actually pushed the U.S. out. They've pushed themselves out of Iraq. So it depends how you look at it. If you think that it's better for the U.S. to get out of the Middle East, which I actually think the U.S. needs to get out of the Middle East, then I think if you want to look at the positive, one positive impact has been Trump has really accelerated the decline of American power in certain parts of the world. It looks really ugly. It's not a nice thing to watch because of some of the ways it's happening, but that's kind of an accomplishment in and of itself. But it's not what he sought out to accomplish. He didn't mean to do that. But it's an
But in comparison to his predecessors, Obama and the others, they always come with big promises of change, of Obamacare, of different issues and whatever for the society, and the foreign affairs issue or the foreign policies are on the same track. They don't change a lot. It's the same thing that happens always with the U.S. president. They come with big promises, but they achieve very little. So this is the case of Trump, I believe.
But I would actually argue that Trump has achieved some big things by accident. And I think he's really accelerated the decline of American empire. I really think that. I don't think he didn't mean to, but his ineptitude and incompetence and, just like blowhard attitude has done that. But you're right. The things that he came in, promising to accomplish is what a lot of presidents do. And in the end, he doesn't have that much to show for it.
So as an observer, my last thing for you is, do you expect Trump to be back in November, in office?
I think no matter how unpopular he seems, which right now his approval ratings are actually quite high, I think anybody who says that Trump is done, doesn't know what they're talking about. There's a very good chance he could have a second presidency.
Right. Rania Khaliq, Lebanese-American writer and political activist, reporting on the underclass. I like that a lot. Host for the In the Now channel. Many thanks indeed for joining us, for your insights, Rania.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Always welcome. Always welcome, Rania. إذا لقاء جديد في الأسبوع المقبل مع ضيف جديد وقضية جديدة ودائما من الداخل. للمزيد من التواصل تابعونا على صفحات السوشيال ميديا من كل فريق عمل برنامج من كل الميادين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.